we did?
All right,
Or
we're good.
blowing it.
All right, guys, we're here to discuss collegiate esports in Florida, how these leaders have developed important initiatives that have been going on in their school, and how they kind of see the scene developing over time. With me, I have 4 presidents from across Florida, and I'm going to have them go one by one and introduce themselves right after I introduce myself. I will be the moderator for this. I am the former president of Texas Tech's League of Legends organization. I'm currently the UConnect eSports Southern Regional Coordinator, and I work Super League gaming events out of Houston, Texas. So we're going to go ahead and start on the end over here with Antonio.
How you doing, guys? My name is Antonio Reyes. I am the current president of the FGCU Gaming Hub, the gaming and esports club here at Florida Gulf Coast University.
Hello, everyone. I'm Max Garcia. I'm the president of Gator Gaming, the official gaming student organization up at the University of Florida.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Word. Hello, everyone. My name is Emery Kutzel. I'm the president of Gaming Nights, which is the University of Central Florida's premier sports club and student-run organization.
Hi, everyone. I am the founder and current treasurer of Panther Esports, the only gaming club at FIU.
Awesome, thanks guys. So now we're gonna go ahead and jump into the questions. So with each of these, we'll go ahead and start from Antonio and work their way down, unless if otherwise identified. So Antonio, explain a little bit about yourself and your student organization.
So a little bit about myself is that I am a casual gamer. I do not play competitively. And this club originally started as a competitive club. So when I kind of stepped in, I wanted to kind of give a little bit of a change. I wanted to make it open to not just competitive players, but to the whole crowd, anybody who really enjoys the geek culture. And just to not be mistaken, the second half of the question was in regards to the organization.
About your organization, correct.
So when I stepped in, as I said, it was an esports club, only an esports club. I changed the name to the FGCU Gaming Hub to make it a little bit more inclusive of everybody. That's really the best way to describe the club here at FGCU is we try to make it so every gamer is welcomed, not just competitive gamers.
Perfect. All right, Max.
So this is my first year as president of the Gator Gaming student organization up at the University of Florida. I've been with the organization this is my 3rd year. So I've seen how it's run for the past 2 years before me, and I didn't like it, so I became the president. And so now we're broadening out beyond the scope of what former presidents have done, and we're getting chapterships and sponsorships from companies we wouldn't have thought of before, and overall just expanding our reach to include all types of gamers.
Perfect, thank you. Emery?
So I've been president of Gaming Nights for just this last year since last fall, but I've been in the club for my entire college career, so all 4 years, 4 and some change. Basically, how Gaming Nights works is that we started as more of a Smash Central club and then has grown into becoming one of the largest clubs on UCF campus with over 100 due-paying members, and we cater to both casual and competitive audiences. Our LANs are made with tournaments in mind, but with always having free room and free areas for our casual audiences to come and play. We just became a sports club, which lets us actually grow our competitive side much more with the inclusion of actual Gaming Nights teams for different games, as well as providing them sponsorships for companies like Logitech and funding for sending them out to different events.
Perfect. All right. David?
So, since I'm the founder of Panther Esports, I've been in the club for its entire existence. When I transferred to FIU, I realized there was no gaming club in place, and so I decided to make one. Our focus mostly is competitive esports. All of our events are just tournaments so far. That may change in the future. Seems to be working well for you guys. That's all.
Thank you, guys. All right, next question. What are some of the important initiatives to your organization? I'd like to go into a little bit more detail on this question.
So by initiatives, give me a little bit more of an example of what you mean by initiatives.
Sure. So, some of the goals that you were driving towards.
Okay, so our biggest goal right now, being such a small club and finally getting the eye of the university, is to become an actual sports team. Because once we have officially become a sports team, we are able to gain some benefits that otherwise we could not have. So as of right now, that is our biggest goal, as well as establishing a scheduled Twitch platform where students would be able to have a way to stream on behalf of the club.
Perfect. All right, Max?
So at the University of Florida, our events, we host weekly events now all the time, and we have our big semesterly events. But I want to expand our reach for these big semesterly events, because right now we host them in our student center, which gives us like a two huge ballrooms, but I'm thinking bigger. I want to take the UF Stadium and turn that into an esports tournament and gaming event for an entire weekend. So that's a lot of growth from the point we are now. So I've started the University of Florida Gator Gaming Esports Initiative, which is getting together with other gaming clubs and companies in order to bring us the funds and the support we need to put on these giant events.
Perfect. Awesome. Emery?
So when Game Nights was first created, our primary initiative was to become a sports club. It was a very big goal of ours to actually become a sports club and start fostering these different competitive teams in Orlando, which is one of the bigger regions for a lot of different games. We've just actually managed to do that this semester. In about a month ago, we actually became the 43rd sport club at UCF out of the 400 plus clubs at the university. And from there, we're hoping to expand both the competitive outreach we have at UCF and also expand UCF eSports to hopefully join the National Collegiate eSports Association, and from there, possibly make a stadium in downtown Orlando. That's a long-term goal for us.
Perfect. Now, David?
So since Panther Esports is still kind of small, we are currently working on still reaching out to the members of FIU, because it's a huge university and still a lot of people don't know about us. So from there, we also want to have a varsity teams for different games. That's a little complicated because you sort of have to align with the sports rules that they have for the current sports organizations, like having someone that knows CPR on hand at all times, just strange things like that. So there's a transition that needs to be made that's complicated, but it'll be worth it.
Perfect. Now I want to kind of take a step back, and Emery, I know you talked about your club status and all of that. I know that's a very hot topic among all colleges, because it is one of the major goals that is shared. Could you go into a little bit more detail about how you secured that status within your club?
Surprisingly, it was kind of difficult. I know when the club was first made in 2013, we did go for a push to become a sports club then, and we were laughed out of the room. A lot of people didn't said, you know, competitive gaming will never be sports. It will never be included with sports. And while I'm on this board, you'll never be a sports club. Well, obviously that's false, because now we are a sports club. A lot of the process on our end was building up the club without the help of UCF or the backing of UCF. It was us making ourselves as large as possible without taking that big step. And then when we were ready, properly explaining to the faculty and staff, what is esports, why is it something worth pursuing, and why should the university care about us as a club?
Awesome, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the next question here. How involved is your school's organization, how involved is your school in your organization's programming? Now this means from an administrative perspective, how involved are they? Do they help with decisions? Are they kind of standoffish? What's going on there?
So first, starting from a lower administrative perspective, we have a lot of faculty, we have a lot of staff such as adjunct professors, and just, for example, our advisor works in the telecommunication department, who absolutely love what we have built so far and want to continue to support us. From the higher end administration, though, it's a little bit different, because as Emery said, it's not something that they view as an actual sport. It's not something that they view as something serious. So we are still in the process of making sure that we can gain that respect from the administration, and we're hoping with events such as EagleCon today, we're able to do that. I think we've seen great progress today. However, it is not quite there. Student government has started to see things in a different light for us, so hopefully soon enough we'll be able to gain that support that other universities have with their administration.
So our administration, everywhere we go to ask for support, their favorite line to tell us is, "We love what you're doing, keep doing it, but no." So from like the higher up administration, they're kind of standoffish because they don't want to give us money to play video games, because who wants to pay people to play video games, right? So what we've started doing is we started talking to the individual colleges at the University of Florida, the College of Engineering and the College of Art, and talking to the higher ups in the individual colleges. And with them, we're putting on events and recruiting members and getting backing from people who sponsor the individual colleges, who also like the idea of the video game events we're putting on to help bring up the student experience at the University of Florida. Because you can get an education anywhere, so we want to set ourselves apart by improving the student experience.
So much like what the first two said, there is a very big disconnect between adjunct professors and actual teachers compared to the higher ups, the deans of colleges, and the presidents of the college itself. A lot of what we ran into was that, very much like was said by Antonio, a lot of professors are like all on board for what we're doing and what we're promoting, and they're like, this is a really cool thing to see and we want to see it grow, but they don't really help that much. An example of this is our actual advisor at UCF. He signs for the papers to make sure that we're still a club, but he isn't as involved as he would like to be, and he's not really sure how he can get involved. What we saw, at least, is that if you go straight to the top, they'll shoot you down, and it's about kind of like climbing up the ladder slowly. What we did at UCF was, we are now a part of the recreational and wellness gym, I guess you could say. We're part of the RWC sports clubs, which is not like UCF football per se, but it's still considered official UCF sports. So it's like, we're not all the way yet, but we're part of the way. And then, by joining these larger organizations inside UCF, from there we actually can start, having the people who would vouch for us, that is in a higher seat of power, actually ask someone else and say, hey, you should give this a thought. This is actually something that could be worth pursuing, could be something that's worth looking into how it can make UCF greater or bigger. And from there, it's kind of what we've been looking at.
So at my university, the administration, as long as we're following the rules that all the other clubs are following, they pretty much let us do whatever we want. But it's within those rules. So for the scale of what we're trying to do right now, it works, but for future events like this one, which we would like to hold, there are, what I do like is that there's paths that we could take that are already in place. So I appreciate that from the administration.
Perfect, thanks guys. I wanted to add on a little bit to that one. I know we talked about the administration as a whole, but something that we haven't discussed yet is about the advisors. Now, Emery, I know you mentioned yours. To what capacity does your advisor assist you in your work and how everything is accomplished? This goes out to all of you.
All right, so I guess mine might actually be quite an outlier, because without our advisor, this event would not be possible. So he has carried, it's been a good 50-50 split, mostly because when I stepped in as president of the club, there was no club. I'll be completely honest. It was to the point where all of the previous officers kind of walked out, nobody was interested, and all that was left was me and the advisor. We managed to put this event together, so I want to say we did a pretty good job, but I would not have been able to do it alone. There's no way that I would have been able to go through the stress of putting an event like this together alone. So he carried a good chunk of the way, and so he has been extremely and actively involved in this club. I know I have met many other club advisors for different clubs on campus, and they sign the paperwork too. So, I mean, it's completely understandable, because there's no requirement for them to really have to do that. It's up to them if they want to, and he definitely has shown that he wants to. I guess I would say that I'm pretty lucky and privileged to be able to have an advisor like the one I have.
So this is actually one of my favorite stories to tell about Gator Gaming. Up until this semester now, we had an advisor who was very hands-off. He would just sign the things we gave to him. But he got a job in Hollywood, so he's retiring now, and he's going to Hollywood. So our new advisor is super hands-on. He's actually coming to help us set up our big LAN like this one next weekend at 7 in the morning to help us set up all of our production equipment and everything. I couldn't ask for a better advisor. It's going great thus far, and we've only had him for a semester, and he's done more work than the last guy has in 3 years. So.
So, funnily enough, we've had our advisor since the inception of the club in 2013. So he's been our advisor for 5 years now. At the time, he was actually like one of the only professors who was willing to actually vouch for us to become a club, because a lot of the professors at the time were like, no, I'm not really into gaming. I don't really care. He's a game design teacher, so he was very into gaming and was willing to vouch for us. He's more into the game design aspect of things, more so than the game playing aspect. So he doesn't get involved as much as he likes, and he's kind of awkward to talk to online and hard to get a hold of. But in person, he's like an absolute delight, and he's really fun to be around and does care about the club a lot, even if he's not as involved as some of the other advisors that have been spoken about here. I would say that we are definitely lucky to have him, because he lets us both, if we need him and reach out to him, he'll help us with whatever we need. But if we want to be hands off with him, he'll like let go and let us take control of what we want to do.
So our advisor also uses a mostly hands-off approach, which is fine. I mean, he used to go to he's an alumni of the university, Florida International University, and when he was going there, he was also in a gaming club that sort of fell apart. So he's very supportive of our initiative, and he said it's gone much further than the club that he was in. So it's sort of like, for him, it's what's the way to put it? Like he's enjoying that we're having fun, more or less.
Perfect, thanks guys. Next up, why do you feel that collegiate esports is important? Now this could be broad strokes, or this could be on an individual level, so feel free to elaborate in whatever capacity.
I was about to say that's a pretty broad question. Why do I feel it's important? Personally, I feel it's important just because it gives a different kind of escape and a different kind of opportunity to your not so average students that, for example, the opportunities that are already in place for scholarships or anything big like that usually fall into the dorm of like athletics or something like that. The collegiate esports scene shines a light on a completely different demographic. It's a demographic that I vouch for. It's one that I am hosting an event for and going to continue hosting events for. So I think the collegiate esports scene needs to grow at every university, because the more widely accepted this is, the more opportunity is provided to a wide variety of students.
Collegiate esports, at least here in Florida, is about 3 years behind the rest of the nation, unfortunately. So if you look to places like California and Georgia, they've got huge scholarships for their students to go to their universities and varsity teams, and that creates new opportunities for these people who wouldn't have an opportunity otherwise. If you put your passion and your love into something that you love doing, I feel that at a certain point you deserve to be rewarded for it. And I think the esports initiatives here in Florida will help these people who have put their heart and soul into the things they love come out on top in the end, as opposed to the people before them who have either had to drop what they loved or went on in a moderate level of success and not the full potential they could have reached.
I absolutely agree with what Max just said. I definitely feel on a very similar vein that Florida is very behind in terms of collegiate esport, and that overall as a whole in the United States, esports is growing very, very rapidly. And there's a big disconnect between becoming a pro player and not being a pro player. There's nothing underneath that. And if you are someone who plays games and it's aspiring to become a professional player, there's no steps you can take to become one other than getting lucky and being picked up by a team. And I feel that collegiate esports is that step that we need. Much like how national level football now has collegiate football, I think that esports will be following the same trend as the years go on, and that soon enough, people cannot deny it any longer. It will become a thing that has to be backed by colleges and has to be backed nationally.
So college esports is great because you're playing when you're competing in these tournaments, you're playing against people that are working hard, trying to get good grades. They are not putting in they can't really put in 40 hours a week in the games they're playing. So everyone's sort of playing around the same level of skill, and that's important because if you're a team that's going up against, let's say you're the Overwatch team for a university, and you're trying to go up against like a contenders team or a league team, you're not going to really have fun. It's really about having fun because in that instance you're not going to win, because of the level of effort that's put in, or sorry, the amount of time that's put in on both sides.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Next up, how do you see collegiate esports evolving over the next 5 years? And how would you like to see it evolve as well?
I guess for me, most of my sights lie on a local level. Where would I like to see collegiate esports evolve in the next 5 years locally in the state of Florida is to catch up with the rest of the world, as Max said. For sure, is to ensure that hopefully Florida within the next 5 years starts to catch up and realize, you know what, this is beneficial. And then kick up to at least high gear to try to make up for the 3 years lost. Maybe hopefully more universities in Florida are able to offer scholarships for these games and just be able to help the students who actually want to make a difference with collegiate esports.
I feel like collegiate esports has opportunities here in Florida, not only from the individual universities themselves, but getting national level esports pros involved in the collegiate scene by having these colleges host their big final events or their huge tournaments that last the week, that you just rent out one of like the stadium here for the big event, and the esports team here helps you put together the event. It doesn't all have to be work done by us at the university. We can get help and put on events with these bigger people and help not only boost ourselves, but help boost the colleges we represent and build a better foundation for our colleges and our clubs.
I kind of think that in Florida, at least, esports is in a very interesting place, and that people are starting to realize, like, hey, maybe this esports thing isn't just a trend that's going to die off. Maybe it's something that will grow into something larger. And I think very shortly in these next 5 years, we'll start to see colleges start jumping on esports and start jumping on the fact that we should get our esports program out as fast as possible and be that college that is known in Florida. Like, if you go to Florida, what's the college you want to go to for esports? That one. Like, that's what the college that's what colleges are going to start looking at and start trying to accomplish. A lot of the time in our own process, when we were trying to become a sports club, a big thing we sold was that we would be the first public school in Florida to have a sports team. And that was a lot of things that people like got hung up on, is like, no one else in Florida is doing this. It's like, yes. So that's a lot of thing that I think will start being heard more and more as time goes on, is that different colleges will want to get involved because of that. And different, not even just colleges, but as Max said, different organizations will want to get involved. Things like the Orlando Magic and Miami Heat will probably start getting involved because that's not a far-fetched thing to think about anymore.
Yes, I'm grateful that Gaming Nights is a sports club now, because there's more of a precedent. So in the next 5 years, we can see way more public universities having official esports teams recognized by the university. I would hopefully like to see us having like Florida leagues for Overwatch, for League of Legends, all these games that having these on a regular basis to keep interest up. That would be great.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Take a step now. This is going to be more of a personal question, and I'd love to hear some anecdotal responses about how you guys have felt that you've developed. But what is something important that you are taking away from being involved in the scene, both at the collegiate level, esports, everything that encompasses?
I guess one of the most important things that I'm taking away from this isn't really even in the esports like actual gaming aspect of it. It's more in the connections that I've made. In beginning, like I said, I stepped into this club in November, and right off rip, we started planning this event. The amount of connections that I have been able to make, the amount of friendships I have been able to put together just from hosting a collegiate esports event has been just phenomenal. So I think that by far is the most important thing. I mean, I've been able to meet you, Brennan, all of you guys. So, I mean, I'm excited to have you guys here and host this event, and that is by far the most important thing.
The most important thing for me personally that I've gotten from Collegiate eSports is when I came into the university as a freshman, I picked up my controller and I went to the fighting game tournaments and I met all the top players from Florida, and from that experience I started making these, like he said, connections and friendships that I wouldn't have made otherwise, and that drove me to become the president of our gaming organization and take on these leadership roles and be a leader and put on some of the biggest tournaments in the Southeast, and just 100+ man weeklies that without the team that I've built along the way and the people who have supported me through these connections I've made, I wouldn't be able to do. And not only does it build a really nice resume, but it also just brings people together and they get to do what they love and they get to play video games. And I think that's the most important thing about these collegiate esports, is it's bringing these people together to enjoy things, not only for their own enjoyment, but they get other benefits from it as well.
When I first came to UCF, I was very, very into League of Legends. I remember I came to gaming nights on a whim with a team saying, oh, you know, it's a college like tournament. I should be able to smash this easily. And I got smashed. So I learned from that, and I ended up getting into gaming nights kind of like by accident. You know, I came to the events, I started making friends, I started sticking around at the events, and then somehow I'm president. I don't know what happened. But definitely being in game nights has been one of the main defining aspects for me for my entire college career. So many things, both on my resume and things that I can talk about freely and confidently, is because of being involved in collegiate esports. Things like charity events that we made, I can brag about how much money we raised for, you know, St. Jude's, or brag about, you know, hey, we had one of the largest events in Florida with over 400 people there at one time. You know, being able to say things like that and say, I brought not just, you know, CS students together, but I brought together people from all these different colleges that wouldn't have interacted anyways without this club being there. It's something really cool to be able to say and be able to tell people later on.
Yeah, I really enjoy that with these events that we hold, that there's so many people from different majors that are becoming friends. Like an example I have to give is that, like, the very start of the club, it was pretty much founded around this Overwatch team that was created to compete in the TESPA leagues, and that team they improved so much in the game in such a short period of time. They became really good friends, and that just sort of happened for these other games. So just the fact that it's bringing together people that play games that normally wouldn't have even spoken to each other, I think that's what's really important.
Perfect. Before we go to Q&A, I wanted to add 2 more questions for you guys. So this is going to be on the fly, so be ready for it.
All right.
So how do you guys feel that collegiate esports, in your leadership position within it, has developed you as a person? And we'll go for that as the first question.
Well, I could tell you right off rip, I can handle stress a lot better. That is for sure. How it has developed me, huh? That's really hard to say. Well, I guess, all right, so aside from being able to cope with stress a lot better, I can now communicate with people at a professional level that I was not. I know this is gonna sound crazy, but in having to reach out to so many different people to host an event like EagleCon, for example, you can't just simply say, hey, I'm doing this, you should come. Like, there's certain aspects that you have to be able to hit on, and all of that was a giant learning process from beginning to end, and that's probably, hopefully I answered your question.
So this is about our personal growth, right?
Personal growth.
Well, personally, when I first stepped into this leadership role, I thought, well, the presidents before me did everything themselves, so I can do that. That's not how it works if you're trying to grow. That's how it works if you're happy where you are and you don't want to expand. So what I learned is that being a leader doesn't mean making sure everything goes correctly. Being a leader means putting your trust in your members and catching them when they don't do it perfectly or something goes wrong, because we're all watching each other's backs and we're all cleaning up after each other to put on these events and make sure everything runs smoothly. People will make mistakes, but it's important for your members and your officers to know that the rest of you will help them correct these mistakes, because we're all working together as a team, and none of them have to be there. We're all there because we want to be. So if anyone that feels like they have to be there and they don't want to put in the work, they're not going to get any work, and then, well, how's that going to look on your resume, right?
I definitely think personally, a lot of my growth came directly from the club. I think that both stress management and being able to talk confidently in front of different audiences was a huge factor as being president in this organization, or even just being involved. Being willing to speak up in a position where you may be in a lower position than somebody else, but to speak like you're on the same level as them is something that I definitely learned from being here. Speaking to heads of different organizations, heads of different like clubs like the Universal, like Orlando Magic, for example, or things like Logitech or EA, being able to just contact them and be like, hey, this is something that's going on around near you. This is why you want to be involved. It's like something that speaks a lot to them, and it's what I feel at least. I also feel that as being president, not just, as Max said, not just managing everything yourself. We've had presidents in the past that would manage everything on their own, and it does look great for them based on what they accomplished during that year. But when they left, everyone was kind of left like deer in the headlights. They didn't know what to do. Like, how do we function, without him to do everything? And that's definitely something I felt at my core this year, like being able to pass on to the younger generation of gaming nights what to do after I leave, because I'm not going to be here forever. I can only fail so many classes before I'm gone. So that's definitely something that I had to pass on to the next generation.
Yeah, for sure. Oh no. I feel personally I've definitely gotten more confident with running these events. You just think of all the things that can go wrong, and a lot of time it doesn't really happen. So you can learn from that, and also you can learn to rely on other people. I would sometimes feel like I would have to be at every single event that we ran, because I felt like if I wasn't there, something would go wrong, but that wasn't the case. And I definitely learned how much trust I can put in other people, and it's been good.
Awesome. You guys handled that question really well.
Thank you.
Okay, and the next question that I had for you guys, what is the proudest achievement that you guys have reached in your time as collegiate leaders? Feel free to take some time if you'd like to gather your thoughts.
All right, it's not very hard to guess what mine is. So the first thing I did as president of the FGCU Gaming Hub was host EagleCon 2018. Put this event together, and so far nothing looks like it's on fire. So I think doing pretty good, and that is by far my greatest success with this club.
My greatest success, I categorize them in two things, from like a club growth standpoint and from an event standpoint. From the event standpoint, my greatest success is turning our fighting game club into a game that now at our event next week, we're going to have 14 different games. We've grown from the 9 fighting games that we had before me to 14 games, including PC games. Splatoon's going to be there. Turns out Splatoon in Florida is pretty big, so if your clubs haven't gotten into it, get into it. And just the rapid growth going from 800 people spring of 2017 to 1,600 fall of 2017 at our Gatorland event. Doubling the amount of people who showed up because we increased the games list was just, I didn't even think that would happen. I thought we'd get the same amount of people. And from a club growth standpoint, my greatest personal achievement is opening these communication pathways with the College of Engineering and the College of Arts and the Dean's office, and talking to them about how to grow our game beyond just the people that we bump into at school and be like, oh, hey, you like video games? Why not come to Gator Gaming? We can put on block parties with these colleges, and because these colleges have student housing, so they have all the people there and they're trapped because they paid to be there. So we can go in and recruit these people who, if they're in college of engineering, chances are they like video games because 75% of our player base is computer science engineers. So our expansion is just exponential at this point, and I'm looking forward to it growing even more.
This question is kind of funny to me because when I first thought about it, I was like, oh, obviously it's because we finally became a sports club. But I was like, well, this year in and of itself has been like a year of crazy growth. From last year, we had over like 60 due-paying members to having over 120 due-paying members is, incredible to me. And then honestly, going into this year as president, I never in my mind imagined that we would become a sports club by the end of it. It was more along the lines of like, oh, let's try and get members first. Oh, let's try and get sponsors first. Okay, now that we got that, let's try and make a big event. Let's try and make a big LAN. Oh, let's try and keep these people coming. And it's like slowly but surely kind of snowballed into the fact that this year has been a really great year for gaming nights. And throughout the year, it went from being a club that to some people said was dying to being, the first sports club in Florida, which I think is a crazy achievement for us.
So, through a stroke of luck, the NALCS finals for League of Legends was in Miami. And we had a few unique opportunities with that I don't know if I can take credit for that though. But for example, there was a podcast, The Dive, if you're familiar with it. They had we actually had a bus of students from our club drive out to a live recording of that. And they also reached out to us for volunteers for their tournament. So a bunch of our members got to go to the finals for free. That was really cool. But I would say what I'm most proud of that's not due to luck, I guess, is we had a big tournament for Dragon Ball FighterZ. 70 people showed up for that one game. It's kind of crazy. And I hope to just have events with more numbers in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And we're going to go ahead and open it up to the audience for any questions that you may have for the panelists. Any questions out there? Go ahead.
What's the largest inhibiting factor you see to the adoption of esports in most colleges here in Florida? You say we're 3 years behind. Do you see a reason why?
Is that for the whole panel? Or
For the whole panel.
Okay.
Each university is like
I guess for our university is that it didn't exist, so bringing it into existence, it's like one of those things where it's just like you put something brand new in front of somebody, they're like, I don't believe this. It's also the ignorance of what is esports. Nobody knows. They literally think it's just playing video games. That is going to be the biggest hurdle to jump over, at least here. In many other universities that are much bigger, I'm assuming they probably have a lot of administration or at least some administration that are aware. Here, there's nobody aware, and that is our hurdle, at least.
I feel like UCF Gaming Nights have already done the hard work for the rest of us by actually getting an official sports club at their university, so thank you. Appreciate that. So from this point forward, the difficult part is because at least at University of Florida, the administration is very, well, I don't know what this is, so why would I care? This is not what I like. I don't play video games. Video games, came out when I was already working a 9 to 5 and didn't want to bother picking it up. It goes from, you have to have people on your side in the administration to convince these people that, yes, it's not something you enjoy and you would put money into, but it's something that other people enjoy and other people put money into. And by putting on events that have growing and growing numbers, we can convince these administrators that the scene is growing and that if they don't want to get left behind, they need to get on the bus now because they already missed the first one 3 years ago.
A lot of the hurdles we faced we got through based on coincidence. For example, our first meetings with the head of the sports club council at UCF, she told us on our first meeting, like, my sons play League of Legends and they're coming to UCF next fall. He had no clue about any esports other than League of Legends, and all she knew about it was that her sons played it and they liked it. And that's something that we found out a lot on our process to becoming a sports club, not just faculty and administrators, but even students, if they're not involved in it, they don't really understand what it is and why it's something they should care about. I know on the path to becoming it, our last hurdle was presenting to all the different sports clubs at UCF and explaining to them why we belonged as one of them. And people were asking us all kinds of questions, saying things like, oh, what does your teammates get out of this? It's like, well, they get the same things that they would get out of any other sport. You still get the same sense of teamwork and competitiveness that you'd get out of any sport. And just like explaining that to people and the understanding of what esports is and why is it something that is going to be getting bigger was a huge factor in what made people's decisions. And all in all, people didn't even understand, like, being able to drop names, like, oh, like the Golden State Warriors, Rick Fox, like different people, like Orlando Magic are getting involved. Dropping these team names, like, kind of gave these people like a sense of realization, like, oh, maybe there's money in this. Oh, there's people actually investing into these games, and there's a reason people want this to become a sport at the college level.
So we're not actually. We've just started looking into it mostly, into becoming a sports club. And right now it's mostly set up. If you look at like the requirements, it's requirements that make sense for a sports that involve a lot of like physical contact, sport where people can get hurt, get like damaged, be outside a lot. And then there's esports where you're mostly, it's in a contained, safe environment. Now, mostly the hurdle is that everything is set up for the sports clubs where that's the case. And we're not sure quite what hurdles we'll have because we haven't been in these meetings yet and we haven't been told no just yet. But we're still working on that.
Thanks, guys. Any other questions from the audience? We have time for one more. Go ahead. Shoot for it.
Yeah, so a lot of you have different organizational structure in your colleges. Do you have an opinion on which one is the best one for you personally? Whether a separate organization, club, sport, or varsity type setup. So this is for the whole panel. What do you have? Do you think it's appropriate? And which one would you wish you could have?
That's a hard question. That's a hard question.
So I can't speak for which one's better because I've only ever experienced one. But I know that us set up as a student organization, it's very strange at the University of Florida. You have your clubs, and then you have your student organizations. And clubs can use UF's colors and have UF's name in their titles and all of their events. But student organizations, we have less restrictions on what we can do. But we can't put UF's name in our things, and our colors can't just be blue and orange. We have to have more, which is why we have blue, orange, and black. Yeah, we're real creative there. But I feel like the student organization structure gives us a lot more freedom to put on the kinds of events we want while still getting mostly we just use the University of Florida for student government funds, which are abysmal, and they're event spaces, which are fantastic. They're phenomenal. So having I guess you could say, the best of being able to do whatever we want and also having UF's resources, I feel like a student organization encompasses both of those things. But in terms of getting a varsity team or a varsity sport, I don't think a student organization is the one that's best set up to do that. I think you need a sports club or a sports organization to do that, which is why we haven't really dove deep into that realm yet, because this is my first year as president, and I want it to be a good year, so I get reelected. So I'm just focusing on growing what we have now, community we have now, and then in the future reaching out to maybe branching off part of us to become a sports club, or maybe just, if we grow big enough, going directly to the sports administration and being like, hey, you see what these other schools are doing? You want to get on that bus? We're going to need a varsity team. We have to build up our reputation first before we step into the varsity sports sector.
So I think I'm in an interesting standpoint for this question because we are in the process of transitioning from a student-run organization, which is like Gator Gaming is, to a sports club, and our hierarchy has to change up a little bit. A lot of the questions we had when moving into becoming a sports club was like, what does this change for our club? What does this change for our members? Does this affect our casual members at all? And a lot of the answers to that was no. And that's something that we are looking into keeping. For us, we maintain the same events and we have the same ability to reserve rooms at UCF and reserve, for example, spaces for that and some funding from the student government. But there is a caveat to where we have now a lot more restrictions from the Sports Club Council, which has, they keep a more of a helicopter mom type persona over their organizations. And that's why it's so restrictive and hard to get in to become one of them. For gaming nights in particular, now that we are going to have teams, we are trying to do a format where we have a game manager. Well, we'll have an eSports coordinator overseeing the majority of the teams. And then each game itself will have a manager. So, for example, a League of Legends manager, an Overwatch manager, CSGO manager, so on and so forth. And they'll be in charge of commissioning a varsity team. And based on interest for that particular game, we can expand it to either more B teams or coaching and so on and so forth. For example, right now we have 6 Overwatch teams, 1 CSGO team, and working on League of Legends. Yeah, we have over 36 people playing Overwatch for us, but there's 1 primary team. The Overwatch community is really, really condensed and really, really big at UCF. So that was like something we picked up, for example. And we don't know if it's the best. We're kind of just getting into this, but we're hoping it works out. Obviously, it depends because certain games have such a small community that it's hard finding a game manager and even hard finding a team. Like, for example, we have a Dota 2 team that's just the Dota 2 team because there's so little players for that game at UCF that at least are willing to come out to these events that all they are really is just a team, and then maybe after they graduate, that team will disappear.
Yeah, it's really hard to have a good structure for these esports teams because new games always come out. There's basketball is always going to exist, football is always going to exist, but the popular games that people want to play is always going to change. So the way the varsity teams the way the varsity teams need to work also needs to be very flexible because you can't just be like, one semester, the League of Legends team doesn't have enough people, so you can't just be like, oh, can't do that. That's not something you can really have happen. So optimally, I would say that you still want to have, like you said, space for the casual members so that they can participate, because not everyone wants to go all in and be in the best Overwatch team. They just want to have fun with other players. So a structure where that balance can exist, where you can have teams like varsity teams for each game, and just like casual teams for just playing against, like in national tournaments like TESPA, or just against each other. That would be ideal.
Antonio, did you have something that you'd like to add?
I did not. I think these gentlemen answered the question perfectly, I would hope.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close questions to the audience, but I wanted to give you 4 an opportunity. If you had a specific question for one of the other panelists, now would be a great time. Do any of you have questions for the other to address?
I didn't think this through. I didn't know this was a thing.
You guys are going to be sticking around, right? Talk to you
Yeah,
after.
we'll-
Okay,
we
yeah,
can
yeah,
talk
yeah.
afterwards
We'll
if
talk
we
after.
need to.
Yeah.
All right, we're all good?
Yeah,
I have
we're all
one
good.
question.
Okay, go ahead and go, Emery.
This is kind of an open-ended question. I know gaming nights, at least in the past, has had issues with sponsors and finding good sponsors to give us a lot of free stuff for free, and we don't have to do much. We've gotten better at that this last year, but I know I know at least Gator Gaming in the past has had a lot of good sponsors, and I know other clubs have gotten sponsors that I've been very jealous at. So I'm very curious what steps you guys took, if you have any big name sponsors, and what you did to get them, and how did you get all the free stuff to give to your members, of course.
Take it away.
I feel like since you mentioned my organization by name, I should answer this question. What it really takes is you just have to, what we did is we've gotten Discord as a sponsor for this last one. That was really easy. You just become a member of the Hype Squad. You fill out an application online, tell them why you're awesome, and then they'll send you shirts and pins to give away at your events. The only caveat is you have to take pictures of people in those shirts at your event in order to get more. So it's an infinite supply of Discord shirts if you take pictures. That one was the easiest one to do, but in order to get people like we have people like Ubisoft and Nintendo, what that takes is reaching out on multiple different communication branches, and then when one opens up, you stick with it forever, and you never drop that email chain. You always maintain the open connection, so it takes a lot of luck and perseverance in order to get these. And as they become more familiar with you and your organization, they end up liking you more and they'll send you more stuff. But outside of a little bit of luck and lots of determination, I don't have much other advice.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's the sad truth.
All right, guys, thank you. I want to thank the audience for coming out and being out here. I want to thank the panelists for driving up here to be a part of the panel. I'm really excited to talk to you guys afterwards about everything as well. But we're going to go ahead and conclude this panel. Thank you guys again.